Hey, and welcome! In this video, I'll be going over my Unreal Engine 4 and Wwise integration project. I created the game in C++ following a course by gamedev.tv step by step, and I also made a few features of my own using blueprints to create some more interesting audio interactions, like a snowy cave, a portal, a health pack, and some visual feedback for low HP and death. So let's begin. To make sure that each room on the level has the right spatial feel, I mapped out the whole level using AK spatial audio volumes and gave each room a separate volume. Depending on the room, I sent the audio played in the volume to one of 3 auxiliary buses set up in Wwise. Each bus has a different reverb on it. The first bus is a small hall reverb. The next one is a large hall. And the last one is a longer cave-like reverb. Once I designed the weapon sounds, I implemented them as part of the pull trigger function. If the character shooting is the player, I'd fire the player event, and if it's an enemy, I fire the enemy event. Back in Wwise, I connected the player shoot event to a random container containing a few different shot samples in it, and made sure positioning was not 3-dimensional, so that we always hear the player's shot in the center. The enemy shoot event is also connected to a random container with the same samples, but this time positioning was set to be 3D so that we can hear the shots coming from the enemy's direction. I also raised the pitch on the enemy's shot sounds to make it easier to differentiate between player shots and enemy shots. In the pull trigger function I mentioned before, I also handled sounds generated by shooting different surfaces in the game. Using tags I placed on each material on the level, I checked for the tag on the actor I hit using the generated hit event. According to the tag I'd find, I'd play one of 3 events. A stone hit event, a snow hit event, or a metal hit event. The enemy's behavior in the game is pretty simple. Once the enemy spots the player, they start walking towards him.
Eyes on target.
If the enemy is in range, they start firing at the player.
Hey, stop!
If an enemy loses sight of the player, it goes to the last known position of the player, and if the enemy doesn't find the player there, it returns to its original spawn point on the level.
I lost them, over.
In the Wwise project, these events are represented by 2 simple random containers, containing the possible responses of the enemy.
Don't move! I'm not sure where he went, over.
These events are called from within the behavior tree controlling the enemies using custom tasks. To avoid spamming the voice line played every time the enemy finds the player, I set up some blueprint logic preventing the event from being called more than once every 2 seconds. The footstep events are compiled of 2 different sounds. We have the sound of the boot itself and the armor's rattle. Each of these sounds is connected to a different event, called by separate animation notifies that I set up in each of the relevant animations. To allow for different footstep sounds according to the surface we're walking on, I placed the different boot sounds in a switch container. Every time a footstep event is called from the animation notify, I check for the surface we're stepping on using a line trace. And just like with the bullet hit sound, according to the tag I'll find on the surface I'm stepping on, I'll set the corresponding switch, either for metal or for snow. The portal has 2 different sounds connected to it. One is the static sound, and the other is the active teleportation sound. Thanks to a custom attenuation curve, you can only hear the sound of the portal when you come close to it. The curve affects both the volume attenuation and the low-pass filters activity. I've set up cone attenuation around the portal so that when you walk behind it, it feels a bit more filtered and blocked away behind the wall. And for the active sound, I've set up a collider box within the blueprint of the portal, and when the player walks into the box, I call the Wwise teleportation event from the blueprint of the portal. When an enemy dies, I call the enemy death event from within the shooter character script. An enemy's death always triggers the same animation, so I've set up a few different variations for the sound so it won't get boring and repetitive. The event plays a blend container that has 2 different random containers inside of it. One with the enemy's vocal expression or scream, and the other with Foley variations of a falling body. Both are played at the same time, but the combinations always change to make for more variety and interest in the sounds. When the player goes below 40% health, a flashing red animation starts playing, and it's accompanied by a matching heartbeat sound. The volume of the heartbeat is controlled using an RTCP, which is updated in this take damage function every time the player takes damage. When the player takes too much damage and dies, the game fades into black over 5 seconds and then resets. When that happens, I set the state of the player from alive to dead. I've set the transition time between alive and dead to be 4.5 seconds. Over this time, I set up the states to affect the master audio bus, and slowly increase the volume and increase the amount of low-pass filtering to create the feeling of blacking out or fading away. So that's about it for this project. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and have a great day.